Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. Now, I do song deconstructions, and I want to deconstruct one of Madonna's songs. She isn't really famous anymore, because she's old and extremely creepy, but back in her heyday, she was quite popular in the 80s, right? She has a song called Material Girl that I want to discuss with you. Now, one of the key lines that I wanted to extract and analyze was as follows in my notes. "'Cause the boy with the cold hard cash is always Mr. Right." So, we do know it's not a uncommon thing for women to desire resources in a mate. And others have pointed out that since there's such wealth inequality now, women have been choosing to opt out of having children with broke men. Now, the thing is, India and China, they're still having children be produced who don't have a bunch of wealth, right? And so America has to really get a hold of the anti-natalist propaganda, because when you go on feminist forums, you will see that many of them say, well, it's too expensive to have kids, so, I'm not going to have any children and we can't afford it. If you look at the infrastructure that America has for now, it is getting worse. The access of hot water and, for the most part, drinkable water, right? You better be careful which county you're in, but for the overall plumbing infrastructure, we do pretty well. And our rivers are not floating with human feces and patches and patches and patches of garbage. Okay? Some places do have droughts, but if you're in a snowy area, boiling snow is not really that difficult. Okay? Especially if you have a stove that works. And there's water filtration systems as well that people can purchase and install. And there's also old-fashioned ways to filter water. Now, women can afford to have children in America. It's just that they want to have their kid have the funds for a giant house, fancy cars, lots of clothes, vacations, theater parks, tech toys. It's materialism that holds a lot of women back from having children. Because if you look throughout human history, so many were poor and had children. But in America, food programs are really hated. You'll see a lot of conservatives, ironically, the ones who are supposed to be Jesus freaks, peace be upon him, they will be like, you're a welfare queen, you gotta get off social programs, you're a leech. Some feminists call stay-at-home wives burdens. I've had feminists tell me that directly. And that women should get up and work. And then those same women complain that childcare is too expensive. So there's always a problem, right? But it always stems down to materialism. Now, don't get me wrong. Health insurance is expensive. You gotta stretch your dollar. You name it. But let's not pretend there isn't a keeping up with the Joneses in America. The cultural phenomenon of fake it till you make it, look rich till you become rich. People will spend on their nails but not buy an organic salad. So, they'll gladly spend money on vacations and other things like that, but they'll cut back on food, and food is medicine. You cannot eat your iPhone in the hospital. And even if you splurge on expensive items, when you resell them, you won't get any capital back. So a lot of the materialistic wealth doesn't actually pay for itself in the end. There are some things, if you're a collector and whatnot, but that's also very rare. Okay? Now, the boy with the cold hard cash is always Mr. Right made me think about a post I saw the other day that said, a man past the age of 30 isn't handsome or ugly, it's about if he's rich or poor. Highlighting how it is quite common for women to be with ugly men who have resources. Biggie Smalls was very ugly, has resources. Jay-Z, extremely ugly, has resources. Harvey Weinstein, a goblin, still was able to get women and give them resources. In this HBO series Succession, the older man has no problem getting a younger woman. You can really start to notice that it's not about looks at a certain point, and women have the ability to shut off their brains and pick someone for survival and luxury. I'm not knocking it, I'm just calling it how it is. Whereas men, on average, I'd argue they go for beauty first rather than a woman's material wealth. Even though it is perfectly fine to marry a woman for her lineage and wealth, but beauty always plays a factor. Okay. So men and women are different, we know that. But I just thought that was an interesting line about the one who has the cash is always Mr. Right. Fascinating. Now, we are living in a material world. I am a material girl. Now, this one is interesting because it lacks the whole spirituality. And then she goes on further, only boys that save their pennies make my rainy day. Now, penny pinching is a form of miserliness. It can be seen as budgeting savviness. But a penny pincher like Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob, he may have wealth, but he got it because he's a miser and a hoarder. And the repeating of living in a material world becomes a mantra. Now, you combine Madonna's beauty, which tricks a lot of men, with the lyrics and the music, the instruments and whatnot, you begin to see how such a catchy tune could get locked in your head. And music and musicians have a way of being these conduits of manipulation and personality shaping. The more you listen to something, the more it shapes you. That's why when you listen to La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah, like you'll hear something Islamic and it's like repeated over and over, and then you'll notice if you keep that up and you cut out music, that'll come into your head when your mind is a bit blank, and that'll give you rewards. You're rewarded for saying remembrances of Allah, praising Allah. But a more degenerate song, such as Madonna's Material Girl, is not going to really do that for you. In fact, it's going to invert you. A lot of women think the cost of a diamond ring shows that how much their marriage is worth. How much can a man provide? How much can he make your life better? These are all things that take into account. You have men who have wealth being flooded by women wanting to be sugar babies, sugar babes we call them, who want to be the mistress, the side chick, men who are forced into monogamy. It's a very hard road. So Mr. Right for so many women is the one with wealth. So they're not chasing the broke man, although you will notice that there are some people who are in jail and then they still got women writing them love letters. And that men have nothing. They're just hoping that when he gets out, I'll be the special one. It's a really strange thing. You'll also notice if you look around plenty of hoods, you'll see that one guy who has like a ripped, shredded body. He's got swagger. He knows game is game, and he gets inside chicken heads' minds, and he has zero problems getting women, even though he's broke. He knows how to be a charmer, get into their pants, and he's openly having multiple women, and they say nothing. He doesn't buy them a car. He doesn't buy them flowers. He doesn't take them out to eat. It's a fascinating phenomenon when you look around the world about how different men get women. Those, ways in which they behave. Now, we do know that Madonna has quite an occultic angle. She's known for mocking religion, okay? She's known for her antics and how she mocks Christianity in particular. And she's a very lewd woman even in her age, her old age. She's gotten tons of plastic surgery. She can't let go of her former years. She doesn't want to age with grace. She's injecting so much Botox. It would be surprising if a rubber band, would be the same consistency as her. So there is some hadiths here and ayats of the Quran that I wanted to share with you. Okay? Of Riyadh al-Salihin, Volume 1. So page 253, number 258. Usama bin Zayd, may Allah be pleased with him, reported, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, I stood at the gate of Jannah, and I saw that the majority of those who entered it are the poor, and the wealthy were kept confined. The inmates of the fire had been ordered to enter the fire hell, and I stood at the gate of hell and saw that the majority of its inmates were women, Abuhari and Muslim. Now, what's fascinating about this one is, I've seen other explanations talk about how the ingratitude of women will lead women to hell. Where does ingratitude come in? I don't have fancy shoes. I want this. I want that. I hate you because you can't buy me this. I want to have the pearl necklace. So-and-so has the pearl necklace. Why can't I? So-and-so got to go to the Bahamas, but I didn't. You're a bad husband. You see? Materialism makes wives into monsters. I'm not telling you to be with someone who wants to be a slob on the couch and you're watching your kids starve. Alright, that's not what I'm saying. Building with a man is totally an option. Could he dump you at the finish line for a younger, sexier woman once he has his wealth? Maybe. Maybe he'll, when he gets to the finish line, will he choose a more updated model, the vulgar way to put it? Maybe that has happened to some women. But there's nothing wrong with getting married to someone who you want to build with. And appreciating the rough journey. Because if he likes you, he likes you. And there is also nothing wrong with a woman who's 20 wanting to marry someone who's 45 who has some establishment going on, who has wealth. And Aisha was young, the Prophet peace be upon him married her, and he married Khadijah who was old. So we can see and then Zainab being in the middle, from my understanding. You see the spectrum. You see the spectrum of what is possible. Okay? Now, if you get stuck thinking about how you're not worthy because you're with a man who doesn't have a lot of money, that's a problem. But I'll make my point even more clear. I saw a picture of a woman in India. It's like when you're driving and then there's that island in the middle of the intersection. A man and a woman were just laying there hugging, and their daughter, who was probably 12, was just over to the side. And I thought to myself, that woman is with a bum. You're literally laying in the middle of the street, hugging him. You got all this romance, and you're not doing what's best for your kid. You are a bad mom. Because you're staying with someone who refuses to work. He needs to be out working, doing something, not laying on the ground in the middle of the road. You're an idiot. Right? But I'm not telling you to be vapid to the point where you would never entertain a man of humble means. Because there's so much, there's middle class, upper middle class. There's men who can provide you with a place where it's a safe community, clean water, decent landlord, decent food. You'll want it life. Because there's countless women all over the world who can't even get that. Alright? They're living in shanty towns. We must not lose track. So, it's common for people like Madonna to really appeal to the female brain, who wants pretty things. Now, here's an ayat of the Quran. Verily, the likeness of this world, of this worldly life, is as the water, rain, which we send down from the sky. So by it arises the intermingled produce of the earth, of which men and cattle eat, until when the earth is clad in its adornment and is beautified, and its people think they have all the powers of disposal over it, our command reaches it by night or by day, and we make it like a clean mown harvest, as if it had not flourished yesterday. Thus do we explain the ayat, proofs, evidence, verses, lessons, signs, revelations, laws, etc. in detail for the people who reflect. So people who reflect. You can see the reason why a woman would want to have a man who can make sure her kids have food, health care, basic clothing, school supplies, nothing wrong with that. When it gets excessive is when a woman who has like 4 kids is like, he has to have no kids, you gotta have this big house and multiple cars and give me an allowance, and you're like, hold up, now you're going way off the rocker there. You're not estimating your value and what you're lucky to get. You're really not thinking here. Things change. Something is beautiful ain't gonna always stay that way. Don't get attached to the adornments all around, because it can all be mown down. Another one. And put forward to them the example of the life of this world. It is like the water rain which we send down from the sky, and the vegetation of the earth mingles with it, and becomes fresh and green, but later it becomes dry and broken pieces, which the winds scatter. And Allah is able to do everything. Wealth and children are the adornment of the life of this world, but the good righteous deeds that last are better with your Rabb for rewards, and better in respect of hope. 18:45-46. So notice this. Wealth is an adornment. Alright? Children. See, Americans are told, send your kid to Yale, Cornell, go into debt. Don't have kids unless you can't send each one to an Ivy League school. If you can't send your kids to college, you're a loser. There'll never be anything. You should be ashamed of yourself. This type of propaganda has caused the birth rates to go down and abortion rates to go up. And then you'll notice the white nationalist Christians are like, we can't have brown people, immigrants coming because they're having more kids than us. We're going to be out, the great replacement theory. But white Christian women are not refraining from going to college, and they're not popping out 10 kids. And they're not telling their daughters to marry at 20 and have 10 kids. You see what I'm saying? It's all connected. So children are a blessing, and you want to be able to provide for them, no doubt. Okay? But you don't have, not each kid doesn't have to have their own bed or their own room in a giant house. And you'll notice that the more wealthier some people get, the less kids they have. It's a very fascinating thing. It's always interesting when you compare, like, India, people will continue to have kids, even though there's a lot of squalor there. But Americans will have a lot more than the people of India, but to say we can't afford kids. It's all about materialism. How do I look? Okay? Does my kid have designer shoes, designer, clothes, the latest phone? I want my kid to be popular and cool. This holds people back from having children. Think about it. And artists who promote materialism promote the destruction of the human soul, in my opinion. Know that the life of this world is only play and amusement, pomp and mutual boasting among you, and rivalry in respect of wealth and children. It is as the likeness of vegetation after rain. Thereof the growth is pleasing to the tiller. Afterward it dries up, and you'll see it turn yellow. Then it becomes straw. But in the hereafter there is a severe torment for the disbelievers, evildoers. And there is forgiveness from Allah and His good pleasure for the believers, good doers. And the life of this world is only a deceiving enjoyment. 57:20. People will say Islam doesn't belong in the West, but look how Islam is telling you the excellence of an ascetic life, the excellence and virtues of a simple life. Whereas someone like Madonna, a modern product of the American culture since the 80s, is saying, we live in a material world, I'm a material girl. And if you look at the implications of that, this is vapidity, this is vanity. This is holding back women from embracing who they really are, because they're told from a young age, you have to go to college. Children are burdens and parasites. Pregnancy is a parasitical process, and being a wife at home is slavery and oppression. You belong at work, grinding it out under fluorescent lights in a cubicle, or at a terrible, grinding, soul-sucking job for an unhappy boss. That's where you belong. And your kids belong in a daycare, crying for you, missing you, and your work people will become your family, and that's your job. That's your life. And if you recall, I shared that David Hogg post where he was doing anti-natalist propaganda, and he mentioned he wants a Porsche, right? Porsche is expensive for the most part, and a vehicle that's overpriced, in my opinion, and it's not a family car. And he wants to be able to have money, and he also said in that post they won't ask you for money for college. You know, like, or that's something along the lines of you won't have to pay for college if you don't have kids. So the mutual boasting of my kid went to this school, it's not always about the quality of the education, but a credentialist dogma, a credentialist cult, where if you didn't go to the school, then you must be trash. Liberals love to do this to each other. They'll say, where did you go to school? Oh, I went to Yale. What was your degree? And, oh, okay, well, not good enough. How come you don't have 3 degrees, 4 degrees, 5 degrees, 6 degrees? There's always up in the ante. It's never good enough. Okay? They don't really care if you actually learned the information, applied the information, got something from your experience. It's all about, well, how much debt did you take to get into the fancy schools? Because we only value the fancy schools. And everyone who didn't go to the fancy schools are ignoramuses. Because they are taught this lie that education only comes from college, and that colleges are the gatekeepers. And that and if you value education, that you have to go to these colleges. When you look at free libraries, online courses, you should really examine how the cost of things don't mean you're actually getting your money's worth. Okay? You can learn things at a faster, cheaper pace yourself from a good tutor or a teacher who doesn't charge a lot privately than you can going to a school where they slow things down on purpose in order to charge you maximum tuition. And you're just paying for that stamp on your transcript. A guy could be more competent from a community college, whereas another guy went to, UC Berkeley, and the people will think that the guy from UC Berkeley is more competent just because he got to that school. And now with people cheating on their exams with AI, and some people pay the teachers, they bribe their way through, we can see some shenanigans going on, so we must be careful with how we judge wisdom. But the fact remains that some people will hold off having children because they don't want their wealth to be impacted, and they want their children to be heavily adorned, right? And so when you see the temporariness of the cycles of life, and how you can become prosperous and lose it, and you can become poor and gain it, you have to be very careful with how you let these people infect your brain. Yeah, we're living in a material world, but we also have spiritual elements to us. Alright? And when you're purely materialistic, I made a video about why you shouldn't pick a materialistic wife, you'll be very unsatisfied. And we do know that there will be some women who will be in hell because they're ungrateful to their husbands, and they're always nagging and complaining, and they're never content with what they have. It doesn't mean you don't strive for more, but it means you enjoy the small things. You appreciate the small things. So it's quite fascinating when you look at it. Okay. And it also mentions, the world is going for deceiving. So the fake it till you make it. Look rich, but don't be rich. Look rich, but being totally in debt. And fake it till you make it. So that others can give you validation and make you feel worthy. Doing these experiments, you can judge a book by its cover sometimes. But evil can smile, and a good person can have a very serious looking face. We have to keep those nuances going in our lives if we are to be wise and safe. Now, O mankind, verily the promise of Allah is true. So, let not this present life deceive you, and let not the chief deceiver Satan deceive you about Allah. 35:5. The present life. Well, I'm only living now. I'm in the now. So I need instant gratification now. So if I want this money, it's gotta come now. Fast, cheap, easy money. Well, that's gonna have a cost, isn't it? And so, I'm a material girl living in a material world is a lot like you're being deceived, because this whole life is a deception. Because the hereafter is the true abode. So, if you're turning down good men, and you only respect those with money, vast amounts of it, well, you're gonna be pretty let down. Because if you look at a lot of these financial bros, a lot of them are sleazeballs, crypto rug pullers, the scamming, people who work for those hacking call centers. The worst money grubbers are like they are actual parasites. It's funny. the people who chase money the most and covet it the most become these creepy little goblins. And they start to really lose sight of what's important. And they want money so they can indulge themselves. They're pleasure chasers. Whether it be counterfeit pleasure impulses or actual. And this life of the world is only amusement and play. Verily, the home of the hereafter is the real life, if they but knew. 2964. Now remember, I'm not saying you have to be with somebody who's going to watch you starve and only feed you rice every day. What I am saying is that when you have a mantra in your head, like through this song that just repeats, living in a material world, living in a material world, blah, blah, blah. Like, this is going to go on and on and on. And if it has a catchy beat, and a beautiful woman is saying it, some women will live vicariously through this witch. And you're like, Isn't it fascinating how someone like, let's say, Dan Bilzerian, he is not perfect whatsoever. But it is fascinating to me when he mentions how, he's gone on that hedonic wheel. He's gotten to experience a lot. And it just still kind of feels empty. It makes me think about that Andrew Tate clip where it was his birthday and he had a bimbo on his lap. And he was saying how unhappy he was. And his brother Tristan was like, what are you talking about? But he's got a hoe on his lap. He's got wealth. It just wasn't really hitting right. It wasn't hitting deep. Because we are spiritual creatures. Madonna is saying, I'm a material girl. Alright. But you're not just the material. You are spiritual. Now, for an atheist, all there is this world. And that's why atheists are so into intoxicants. They really want to get hammered, get into psychedelics, indulge. Nothing is taboo. You're free to be as debaucherous as you want because the clock is ticking, time's running out, live on the edge, live fast, die young. Okay, their ethos is highly polluted. This is why you'll see Sam Harris types really into wine. They're just really creepy people. Now, the cold hard cash angle is Mr. Right. I wonder how many women were forced as a princess to become a queen, marry a king. He was ugly, sniveling, but they had to do it because they wanted to keep up their appearances. I wonder how many women, they were a countess, a duchess. They had the wealth, but they kind of saw someone else who had a simple life and wanted to be with him, but society didn't want them to step down. There are cultures that feel you should only marry within your caste system, and that you should marry based on the caste system, not on the character traits of the individual. I wonder how many people chose materialism over true connection. Now, I'll keep saying this, I'm not telling you to pick someone who can't even pay the electric bill. I'm just reminding you that if there's a guy who comes to you and he's a construction worker and he's a better match than the sleaze boy Wall Street guy, you should consider that. Don't just think about the material angle. Because that can still be a gnarly road. Okay, and women are taught to be materialistic. Diamond rings, fancy weddings, expensive dress. They want all these retarded purses so they can brag to their friends. It's really bizarre. It's really bizarre. Okay? And to have a penny pincher, it's really hard. A generous man isn't necessarily a penny pincher. A responsible man can budget, but you have to be careful because miserliness is not an Islamic value. Because feeding the poor and helping the orphans is a very serious blessing in Islam. Okay? And feeding the poor and helping the orphans, this is a good deed. And we are judged by our good deeds. We'll be rewarded for our good deeds. None of our material items will make it with us. And the more material wealth we hoard, the more vultures will surround us. Okay? Brothers turn on brothers. How many grandchildren are just straight skulking about their grandparents' beds, hoping they'll die so they can get the inheritance? It's a nasty world. A nasty world. So, understand that music is around for a reason. And that the musician is a magician. And it's not a joke when a musician is an open occultist, because they're putting stuff into your head that you'll repeat at work. You're driving in traffic, what you listen to, your brain focuses on, and this is something to think about. It's not a game. Atheists will, as I mentioned before, they'll say like, oh, Vivaldi, he really just makes me feel so excited, and wow, Beethoven this, and yada yada. But suddenly when people mention that they get evil thoughts, impulsive thoughts, degenerative thoughts with certain types of music, the atheists are like, no, that's not possible. You're an idiot if you let music influence you. Meanwhile, oh, when I'm sad, I listen to this and it makes me feel better. So they only ever frame music as some sort of lethargic, mimetic mode, when in reality, it's something way more manipulative and hypnotic that can cause your mind to focus on nonsense. So, remember this other hadith. Hold on, just want to make sure I didn't already say this thing. Okay. Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, may Allah be pleased with him, reported, Messenger of Allah, peace be upon him, said, the world is sweet and green, alluring, and verily, Allah is making you to succeed each other, generations after generations, in it, in order to see how you act. So, beware of this world and beware of women. Sahih Muslim. Riyadh Salihin, Volume 1. Now, what kind of women should you beware of? I argue, a materialistic wife. What is Madonna telling women to be? A material girl. Cold hard cash. They're a boy that saved your pennies for me. Spend that dragon coin on me. Someone who lives in the here and now, has no contemplation of Judgment Day, no desire to refrain, no ability to withhold, no ability to defer, just here, now, buy, consume. This is not going to be easy to maintain such a hungry hippo, entity that just wants more. Oh, I want this purse, I want this shoes, I want this ring, I want this perfume, I want this restaurant. I want. But suddenly when a man says, can you cook and clean? Oh, what am I, your maid? What am I this? What am I that? They want to be Bill from Beauty and the Beast. Be our guest. This is not a sustainable way to have a lasting connection, because all these marriages that have lasted over 30 years, it's up and down. And if a woman just says, oh, I'll get married at 20, divorced by 25, remarry at 26, and then divorce at 35, and then I'm just bouncing from man to man, eventually she's going to run out, because she doesn't have the beauty to uphold that. Now, there are some women who will say, oh, well, some women age really well so they can keep going on that carousel for a while. That's not really sustainable either, because the higher body count you get, and the more emotional attachments you get, the more mental load you're going to just dump on each guy, and you're going to carry that trauma with you, those dysfunctional habits with you, and you're always going to be comparing him to your exes, and it's just going to be a disaster if you really don't watch it. Okay? So the occultist Madonna, and she's such a nasty woman, she named herself after Jesus' mom, because the Catholics call Jesus' mom the Madonna. It's very common. I'm not sure if they do anymore, but that's how it was used. She's not like Mary, and I'll be pleased with her at all. Mary, for us Muslims, the fig tree is involved, right? Her childbirth is suffering, and how it's happening in the Quran. For Christians, she gave birth in a barn. She was not a vapid, materialistic wench. And she's a very pious woman. Very chaste. She was a virgin. Okay? She didn't think, you know what? I'm gonna go sling it to Mr. Right, who got all this hardcore cash. No, she wasn't like that. So for Madonna to name herself and behave in a way that's opposite to the actual Madonna tells you what kind of person she really is. And what's her agenda, what she's trying to tell girls to do. It's interesting. Because the vapidity of materialism has been a long cultural thing. So when a Christian white nationalist says Islam doesn't belong in the West, they don't say Madonna doesn't belong in the West. They say ban the hijab. They don't ban the way Madonna dresses. Don't ever have the call to prayer in public, but Madonna can make her concerts in public. You see, the Christians now are so lost, so deluded, so afraid that they're threatened by Islam because Islam has a superior code of modesty, puts women in their rightful place, and helps society prevent these decaying things. Christians have been taken over by secular liberal atheists, totally dominated, boots on their heads. They don't have the spine or the wherewithal to reject that system that has corrupted them. They rather fight for it than anything else. But hopefully we learned that materialism isn't the end-all be-all. Nothing wrong with wanting to have something nice. You know, Uthman ibn Affan had wealth. He used it for the cause of Allah. We do need wealthy people in the Ummah to fund schools and do good deeds, and having more wealth can help you to do more building projects, restoration projects, you name it. But if you're only using it, I'd argue, for an Apple Watch, 70 pairs of shoes, I think then you went astray. The sheer volume of starving children is quite alarming. The sheer volume of people in medical debt is alarming. And so, be careful. Be careful. Men are given a good list of, choose her for her religion, her piety, her lineage. You're allowed to choose for beauty. I would also argue that sometimes women can forget that it's not have a homeless man or have a Wall Street guy. There's a gray area. And choose what's right for you. But make sure that he actually likes you. But at the end of the day, women are very savvy on how to survive. So there's not anything necessarily wrong with a younger woman wanting to marry an older man and be a second, third, or fourth wife because she doesn't want her kids to, have hunger pains and be hunched over and suffer from malnutrition. So, actions are judged based on your intentions as well. So we have that to look at. So, be safe, be wise. Let me know what you think. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Join the blog, helps out massively. And reflect. As always, take care.